Hi everyone, how are you? I sounded so drunk, I swear to God, I'm completely sober. My name is Jarett Wieselman, I work for BuzzFeed. I'm very excited to be here with you tonight, and it's rather fitting we're here on a Thursday, because for the last umpteen years, Thursdays has been owned by Shonda Rhimes, it's been owned by her shows, the cast on social media, so let's just bring this TGIT live tweet into real life with Katie Lowe's. I don't think that was even intentional. This is when you were available.
Happened.
This is when you were available.
I know.
Big
I
deal.
love doing scandal things on Thursday. Hi, everybody. Hi.
Thank you so much for being here, Katie.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. You know, this show is a phenomenon in a million different ways. I mean, before we really get into, like, it.
I thought you were going to talk about when we partied together like 3 years ago. No, we're not talking about that? I've known Jarett for a little while, and I love him. So anyway, okay, are we getting serious?
I paid her like $0 to even say that, by the way. No, but I'm curious. I mean, you are now in season 5 of Scandal. As an actor who has, like, you know, worked on stage and, like, grinded it out, what does it feel like to be in the 5th season of a television show?
It's really weird because oh gosh, in ways it still sort of feels like the first. Like I don't know if you guys know this, but Scandal is this weird, I've heard from a lot of people who come and they do guest stars on the show, that it's a wonderful group of people where everyone's actually like really nice to each other, and the writing is phenomenal because it's Shonda Rhimes. And so I don't know, I feel like it's just going by in a flash. I have to keep reminding myself that it's season 5, and this season we're going to be doing episodes 71 through 90. I'm like, what is even going on? I mean, it's crazy. I feel like I booked it yesterday, so that's how I feel.
Absolutely. Well, I'm curious. I mean, was acting the only thing you ever wanted to do?
Yes. Yes. Acting was, I don't ever remember choosing it. I don't remember like that moment where I got that part and I said, oh my gosh, I think I want to be an actress. Like I just kind of was like born, and then I said, my mom I was in dance classes at 2, or singing, or constantly performing around the dining room table and being crazy and trying to make people laugh and trying to get applause all the time. And yeah, I just never, it was always what I did for fun. And my dad is a fashion photographer, actually, and I grew up right outside New York City. And I can remember being 13 and like begging and screaming and crying for an agent and to just take me into the city so I can do auditions. And my dad was like, over my dead body, like, absolutely not. If you, yeah, he was like, no. If you want to be an actress, I support you 100%. I want you to do the community theater in our town. You can do all the high school plays and musicals. If you decide to major in that in college, you know, I support you and that decision. But you'll decide that as an adult that that's going to be your career. And so essentially that's what happened. About a year later, I was like, well, I'm going to apply early to NYU Tisch School of the Arts. And I did.
I was like, and then
and
you
I got
in. Yeah,
Thank
so
God.
It's not the craziest.
Yes.
What was that like, Tisch, as like a training ground for you?
It was awesome. I think, you know, I made really, really crappy experimental theater, which is what you do when you're like, well, it's what I did between ages 18 to 21. We rolled around a lot on the floor, and we were naked, and like we were super crazy, and everything was super dramatic, and which was very important growing up time in my life. But I think the most important thing I got out of the school actually was the group of friends that I made, because everyone from my year and the years above and below me are still actors, or now they're writers, or now they're directors, or now they're producers, or the executive producers, you know, so on and so forth. So I have this whole sort of family out here in my best friends that are still from college, and we all make art together. And I run into friends of friends in so many rooms just because we have that kind of, you know, alumni kindred thing going on.
In addition to sort of just, you know, acting like a tree that's been stripped down and thrown on the ground, I mean, what kind of disciplines did you study, and like what do you consider sort of your discipline?
You know, it's so cool because I feel like I'm actually on a TV gig that uses a lot of my training, and I don't I went to Stella Adler when I started. at NYU. NYU is broken up into different studios. So you can get into Adler, you can get into Strasberg, you can get into Meisner, you can get into experimental theater wing. So I started out in Adler, which is all like imagination work, and I used that a lot. And then I actually went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts and did a semester abroad where I did Shakespeare like 8 to 10 hours a day and studied with all the Brits. And that has proven to be one of the most useful tools that I use on Scandal, only because so much of Scandal is about pace and diction and being able to speak very quickly against a ticking time clock, but also at the same time throwing it away and making it seem like it's normal. And that's how I always thought of Shakespeare. And then I came home and went to experimental theater wing, rolled around on the floor, got real experimental. My parents came to the plays and were like, what the hell is this crap? No offense, ETW, you were great. So I use that stuff a lot, like all the vocal warm-ups and like, you know, on mornings where I go into Scandal and it's really early, like 5 o'clock in the morning or right after lunch and I just had like a burger or something, and my mouth is tired and my body is tired, I use a lot of the stuff I used in school. And I do a lot of voiceover work too, so I use that also training.
So what point did you get your SAG card? What was the job that got you your SAG card?
So I graduated NYU and was a waitress, and I had this kind of shady manager who sent me out on like some commercial auditions. And I actually booked a couple, and I booked 2, and I think the rule was you were allowed to do 2 jobs, and then when you book your third, you gotta pay the SAG dues, and you gotta be a SAG member, right? So my 3rd commercial I booked was for that patch birth control. Do anyone know what I'm talking about? Like, it's like a patch that you stick on and the hormones go in your body, blah, blah, blah. It never ran. But I booked it, and they said, okay, now's the time. You have to pay your dues. And at that time, the dues were, I remember, $1,440. They've since then gone up. And I didn't have it, and I begged my parents to borrow, and I paid them back with the money I got paid for the commercial. And that is how I got my SAG card.
Amazing.
Thanks, SAG. It's very important, very important.
So with somebody who has a big theater training background, how long did you sort of stay in New York for after graduation, and what was this conversation about moving to LA like for you?
God, I feel like such a traitor. I love LA now. I've been here 9 years, but I am born, raised New York. My mother talks like this. Like, I grew up in Long Island. Like, she's from Queens. Like, everyone in my family's from New York. Like, you don't leave. You know what I mean? Like, you're there. And I grew up, and I really only wanted to do theater. That's what I trained to do. That was my first love. It still is my first love, 100%. I graduated NYU, and for 2 years I stayed in New York, really just waitressing, and like the rent was so expensive. And I booked a couple little things. Like, I got 1 line on The Sopranos. It was awesome. And I got a couple lines on Guiding Light and a couple lines on As the World Turns. And I got 1 line on a pilot starring Marcia Gay Harden. So these like little tiny things over 2 years. But they were like huge. I mean, no one from school was working yet. It was like a big, like, I mean, I thought it was like a huge deal. But it still wasn't enough that I was still waitressing 5-6 days a week, you know? And then I started dating this guy who was like, I think we should try LA. And don't tell my husband Adam Shapiro this. No, I'm kidding. He knows the story. And he was like, I think we should try Los Angeles. And I don't know, it got in my head. Like, oh my God, here's this place I've never been. That's 3,000 miles away from my family, which is kind of cool and really scary. I talk to my mom like 500 times a day. So I came out here for a 3-month trial period. We subletted an apartment for 3 months. And I never came home. And my dad still, to this day, says to me, like, you said you were only going to be out in Los Angeles for 3 months. And it all of a sudden became, it took me a year and a half of living in Los Angeles before I booked a single job.
Wow.
And it was awful.
So in either the New York time or the LA time prior to that, what was like the worst job you had that you needed to have in order to sort of fulfill the acting dream?
Like day job? Well, I've had a billion of them on both coasts. Let's see. In New York, I had a great waitressing job, aside from like people doing drugs in the bathroom and stuff like that. But that, whatever, that's par for course. I moved out here and I was a nanny for a bunch of very successful people and really scary people. And they like ruled my life. I was a wedding planner's assistant. She was a celebrity wedding planner. So I would spend my weekends doing the Friday night rehearsal dinner, the Saturday wedding, and the Sunday brunch, and would stand for 40 out of the 48 hours dealing with brides, which is super awesome. And then I ran a catering company out here. And these were all the things I did out here. And it was kind of amazing. I became like the master of having these day jobs, but telling the boss, I'm going to kick so much ass, 150% when I'm here. But that means I get to leave for auditions whenever I need to. And if I book a job, you're going to cover for me. And I exhausted myself, but I did that for years until I booked Scandal. When I ran a catering business, I made that place millions of dollars in that, and I love him still to this day, my boss, who let me go to every audition. He never resented me for it. It was awesome. So it was really like, I think that so much of the key to success for actors out here trying is to just find that day job that lets them, able to take opportunity when it comes knocking. Yeah, that was kind of my... So they were all bad, Jarett. They were all really bad.
Well, let's talk about auditioning since you brought it up. Do you enjoy auditioning?
I do.
You do?
I do.
I think you might be the first person I have ever interviewed on this stage who has actually said that.
I've done it probably 100,000 times. I don't know. A lot, which is great because that means that I have like a good team because not everybody gets those opportunities. But I don't know, like, something just clicked for me. Like when I wasn't working for so long on a consistent basis that the time that I could act was in class when I was paying for it, and I'm always in class. I'm in class now, and auditions. And I don't know, I loved it, and I never took it personally. Like I was always like, whatever. If you guys don't want me, you don't want me. Like someone's gonna want me. Well, no, there were a lot of days where I was like, no one's gonna want me, but but I don't know. I just always felt like if I do my job and I'm prepared and I've done the work and I come in and I don't act like a psychopath, I feel like at some point someone's going to give me an opportunity. And I kept seeing that happen because I never booked the first job I go into a room ever. I never have, but I always book the 7th or 8th time. Because I have noticed in my short career, and I can't even believe I can say that, but that I have one. But in my short career, I've noticed that like I'll go in the first time and just start to like knock them down, like, and then I'll go in again and they'll give me another one and they'll start to say, okay, bring it back in, Katie, bring back in Katie. Like, we don't know if she's right for this, but bring it in. And I'll always do my part. And then by the 7th or 8th time, like, they're like, okay, we'll hire her for a guest star. You know what I mean? And then that's how I got into the Shondaland world.
Let's talk about that. Was it Grey's or private first?
Private.
Okay, so you did a private practice guest spot. What is a Shonda Rhimes audition like?
Oh my God, it's the best. Well, first of all, it's really scary because it's Shonda Rhimes. And they used to be in this small office. So Linda Loewy's her casting director. She's married to Cyrus on the show. And I went to the school at Steppenwolf, a summer school, when I was 19, and that's a theater company in Chicago that Jeff Perry started. So Jeff Perry was my acting teacher when I was 19. So the casting director of Scandal had already known me for a while and had been calling me in for years, which is really nice. And I got finally, like, beating down the door episode, like audition 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, I know, a while. I got the private practice guest star. And that's when Shonda first, like, really noticed me. And then the next year, they had the pilot called Off the Map. Do you guys remember this? It was like a Doctors Without Borders type of Grey's Anatomy type show. And there were 3 female lead doctors on it. And they kept calling me back in every single day for each one of the doctors. Like, I went in for a doctor one day, and they were like, you were great. It's not a right fit. Can you come back in tomorrow for this doctor? Absolutely. What are those sides? Like, let's do this. Come in the next day. I'm like, oh my God. Nope. That's not a right fit. Can you come back in for the next doctor? Absolutely. Because I could feel like they were trying to find a place for me. Didn't get any of them. had quit my babysitting job that pilot season because I had had a lot of auditions and I couldn't hold everything down. I was completely broke. And it was terrible. But the next season, my second audition was Quinn, and she gave it to me because of all the stuff she had seen leading up to that, like the private practice she had seen, all the auditions she made me go through for Off the Map. And Scandal came around, and I got the audition, and the name of the role was Quinn. My middle name is Quinn. I lost my shit. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I think this might be it. Like, I don't know. I feel like something, I don't know. I know she liked me last year. Maybe she'll like me again. The lines went in real easy. And I was like, oh my God. Like, that's also a sign, I feel. Like, when you work in auditions, it's like sometimes things just come in and out real easy. And sometimes you have to muscle through a little bit more. But this one went in real easy. She was in the room with Betsy Beers and Linda Lowy, and they were all sitting there. She gave me a redirection. I did it again. It was the bar scene with Harrison from the pilot. And I remember her saying, talk faster, all that stuff. And they called me back in a week later, and she sat me down. And I thought I was going to read again, like a callback. And she said, Katie, I just showed your tape to ABC Studio and Network. We're not going to test anybody else. I'm just going to give you the part. And then I cried. A lot, like a real ugly cry.
The great thing about that story is it's on the internet.
Yeah.
Like, you can actually watch the videotape of Katie get the role, and it is like simply the most adorable, honest, genuine thing I feel like I've ever seen.
They taped it, that moment. Like, the video camera was on because I thought I was going to read sides again. So I just think it goes to say, like, I didn't know anybody in this business, and I don't consider myself like a supermodel or anything, but I'm a really hard worker, and I really, really have a hard time giving up. I don't do that. So I feel like I just kept knocking on Shonda Rhimes' door. And here we are on season 5, and I'm like, what the heck? This is crazy.
Well, when you read that script, aside from the fact you guys had the same name, what was it about her that you responded to as a character?
First of all, she speaks quickly, so do I. And I have been told to speak slowly my entire life and that no one can understand me. Again, New Yorker, my mother talks fast, my grandmother talks fast, everybody talks fast. So that was big. And then I also, because she was the new, like, it's weird. I feel so much more like Quinn early seasons than Quinn now. Like, Quinn's got such swag now, and I'm just like, oh my God. I have to keep reminding myself how to walk and be in leather jackets and, like, hurt people and, like, all this stuff. Because the beginning seasons is far more, I think, of who closer to me. And what I really related to is that she was the newbie, that she was the rookie. I felt like that so much in the experience of the scenes. Like, I just was like, when she says, like, I'm going to get to work for Olivia Pope. Like, I just remember being like, I'm going to get to work for Shonda Rhimes. Like, it was like the same thing. Do you know what I mean? So I really, really connected to that. And I loved that it was a DC show and it was really dark. And I loved that, oh my God, I remember finding out when Kerry Washington got the role, I was like, wow, like, this would be just amazing.
As you're talking about sort of like the evolution of Quinn going from this sort of, I was going to say, like, this corn-fed, innocent girl to someone who now, like, drills people regularly in body parts with, like, I mean, has it been sort of surprising to you?
Yes. I mean, it's so surprising. Shonda said something in the beginning, like, I watch what you do, and it really informs how we write. I have no idea what I've been doing that would make her think. I honestly don't know, but I'm very grateful for it because I think a lot of times in television, especially, I'm a huge TV fan. Like, I love television. I spend a lot of my week watching TV. But I think that a lot of times characters come in and that's how they stay for 7 years, and especially the ones you love, and that's great. But I feel so grateful that Shonda has really let me do a huge, I've gotten to paint so many different colors in one person. And I think it's really true. I mean, I'm nothing like what I was in my 5 years ago either. So, I mean, not that I wasn't killing people and not killing people, but You get it. I mean, she also, the people she's around. Like, she's trained by Huck, and she's trained by Olivia Pope, and she pulled scissors out of her boyfriend's neck. Like, she's seen some stuff that has made her into the woman she is today. But it is very far from me. I always am like, when we're doing like down the hall shots, I'm like trying to walk like Kerry Washington as Olivia Pope. I'm like terrible at it. My feet hurt. It's so, it's further from me. So I hope you guys are believing it.
Well, now that she is so much further from you, do you have to do anything to get into her in the morning or get out of her at the end of the day?
I think TV's a huge help. To get into her, I think a lot of it helps that I'm usually with Guillermo, and he's so dark that I'm like, oh right, we're not allowed to smile anymore. Or his character is. He's not at all. He's actually super smiley and positive. I swear. I think the dress helps. The clothing has changed a lot. I'm a very outside in sort of actress. I think that's a lot from the Adler training. I get a lot of help from props and where we are and what I'm wearing, and all of that really feels like my gladiator in a suit armor. So that super helps. And then when I come home, I just like my reality television, because just zone out. I can't read the magazines anymore because we end up in them and I get scared. You know what I mean? I used to read stuff, and now I don't. So
understandable.
Yeah.
I believe the episode you guys saw tonight involved an unofficial dentist trip for.
I went to the dentist today, everybody. I really did, and it's totally random. TGIT Dentist Day.
But I mean, that was a very intense episode to watch. I'm curious what that was like to film.
It was awful. I mean, it wasn't aw- I mean, it was, we shot all those scenes in one day. It was on Halloween, and I spent the entire day in a duct tape bra and nude underwear, and my arms were duct taped like this, and then every hour they would unduct tape my arms so I could have a break and open my arm, because my ligaments in my elbows were getting all messed up. But it was, Guillermo's my best friend, one of my best friends, and we just really dug deep. We showed up to a rehearsal a couple days before. They showed us all the tools he was going to be using so that I felt safe. And seriously, this is crazy. They showed me the tools he was going to be using, how my jaw was going to get through it for the day. All this stuff, taking a lot of precaution, because I had to be laying on a floor for 15 hours, that the carpet was padded. They took really good care of me, which is wonderful. But I just trusted in him, and we really go far with each other. That's kind of our deal. So it was just a really hard day. And then I remember the last two scenes of the night were when I have to make out with Charlie. And I told George Newbern, who's also a dear friend and a wonderful actor, I said, dude, by the time you show up, I'm going to have been on the floor screaming my head off for 12 or 13 hours, and you're going to be my salvation. So please just know I'm going to be in shambles, but we're going to get through it. And I had to remember, I dropped the towel and I kiss him. Oh my God, could you imagine doing that? After, I mean, it was really intense, but I knew it was going to be. So I really just mentally prepped myself for a crazy, crazy, awesome day. And fulfilling day, and yeah, it was hard, but I'm glad we did it.
In those moments, I mean, this is something that I think also maybe speaks to being in a show for 5 years, which is something, as an actor, you can't really know what it feels like until you're doing it. Yeah. The endurance that it takes, I mean, something like that.
It's the whole, when I booked this job, Chandra Wilson was shadowing, directing the pilot. Oh, no. Maybe she was shadowing the first episode of the second season. Now, she's been on Grey's for oh my God, 12 years? What is it now?
I think they're in season 11.
They're in season 11, something long. And I said to her, what is the secret? What do you do? And she was like, it is all about endurance and longevity. See, it's great. There's all these cable shows that come along, and they do 10 to 13 episodes, 16 max. We do 21 to 22. Grey's does 24. That is a serious haul to be and a beautiful thing, but it is all about pacing. It's like if you get an episode where you're light, your character's lighter, it's like, okay, I'm sleeping, trying to get 6 to 8 hours of sleep at night. I'm going to the gym. I'm like eating, like it's almost like we're Olympians, you know what I mean? Because then the next episode you get, all of a sudden you're in every single day, you're not sleeping at all, you're holding on to your lines, and it's just a really big grind for 10 and a half months of the year. So, and a lot of times we're working on 2 episodes at once and putting all these lines in and trying to figure out, okay, if Quinn did this last week, like, where is she now? How do I feel about you now? Do I like you? Do we hate each other? What's going on? It's constantly, and then when you go home, you think about it still all the time too. Like, oh God, I sucked today. I just figured out what that scene was. Oh shit. Like, that happens to us all the time. Like, when we're back in the trailer taking off our makeup, we're like, oh my God. Oh my God. Shit, we can't ever get that one back. But we try again tomorrow. It's like, that's just what it is. And then some days you leave and you're like, we smashed that. And some days you leave and you're like, I'm the worst actor in the world.
One of the great things, though, I think about your show, I would imagine for you, is the interaction with the fans. I mean, I think it's easy to forget that prior to 4 years ago, the engagement on a nightly live tweet wasn't really happening in the way Kerry and you guys sort of ushered that into existence.
She's so smart, Kerry Washington. None of us were on Twitter. Are you guys all on Twitter? Oh, it rules my life. In a great way. Like, it's the reason I feel like our show got a second season. And you guys will know, and if you already have your show or whatever, but like when you get your show or you're close to a show, like you would do anything anyone told you if they said, this is what's going to help get people to watch this show. I wasn't a social media person before this show was on. I wasn't even on Facebook. Like, I did not like any of it. But when Kerry Washington and Shonda Rhimes say, join Twitter, we need to connect with people to get them to watch this show because people aren't watching, and they weren't the first season. Jarett knows he was one of our first OG original gladiators. Thank you very much. But we really were kind of on the bubble season 1. We weren't a shoo-in for a pickup. It wasn't until the middle of second season that people were really looking at what we were doing. And so we tweeted our asses off. Anything we could do, please. Thank you so much for watching. Tell anyone you know. I mean, that's all we did for months. And then it became this whole buzzed about thing about appointment viewing and throwing a Twitter party to get people to watch the show and interact with the fans. And we interact with everyone. I mean, what time is it? At 9 o'clock, I got a live tweet the West Coast. You know. So it has been a blessing. Yeah. Huge, because I want to be on this show for forever. So...
I mean, do you guys, it's now something that every show does. I mean, every show.
I can't even believe it. Every single time my friend books a show, a new show on ABC or any network, they come down and they give the social media lesson and they use Scandal as the, look at what they did. They saved their show. We ask everyone to join Twitter, just like the Scandal did. And I'm like, oh God, I feel bad for for people who don't want to, but it really was one of the greatest things we could do.
So I'm curious because, this is something that is an industry thing. I've heard actors say it's harder for them to book work if they actually can't bring a social media following to the table now. I mean, what do you think about sort of it influencing that arena of Hollywood?
I've heard about, fortunately I haven't really had to audition much in the last 5 years, but I have heard that friends of mine, if they're up for an indie movie and there's 2 girls up for the part, the girl who has more followers is more likely to get the part. Because that's how she can send a tweet saying, please everyone go opening weekend, and actually push some butts into seats. This is just the new way it's going. It's either get on board or don't. And look, there are brilliant actors in our union who are not on Twitter. I don't think Jennifer Lawrence is on Twitter, or Meryl Streep is definitely not on Twitter, or whatever. But then there are these movers and shakers like the Kerry Washingtons and like the Elizabeth Banks and these women who are multi-hyphenated artists. Like they produce, they direct, they act, they make their own stuff. And I just feel like social media is nothing but a huge help for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of people who make their own stuff, it would be sort of remiss not to talk about Iama.
Thanks.
It's your, it is, she has a theater company in Los Angeles where they put on plays. Someone who comes from the theater and has that in them, why was it so important to you to create sort of a Los Angeles theater experience?
It's a huge, when I moved out from New York with this whole group of friends from college and we were all working at the same restaurant, and I was running the catering department, we all kind of looked at each other and were like, what are we doing? And we didn't know how to make a web series. We didn't know how to make an indie movie. That's not what we learned how to do in school. We didn't have cameras or like a sound department. Like, we didn't know. But we knew how to make theater for $50. It's what we did in New York. It's what we did at school. And so all of a sudden we kind of realized, okay, if all of us just put in $100 and like rent a theater for a couple nights, we can put on a play. And we did, and it was written for us. It was a brand new play. It was horrible. Literally one of the worst written pieces of garbage I've ever taken part. But it got us to make something and all get together. And we were like, okay, let's make a theater company. We're like 25 years old. And turns out one of the people that we started this with who was an acting major with us at NYU, turned out to be like an amazing writer. And she wrote us 7 plays, one for each sin, and it was called the 7 Deadly Play series. The first sin we did, I think we had 4 people in the audience for a 5-week run. The second, swear to God, this second play we did, all of a sudden word of mouth started to spread, and we started to just corner the market on this sort of like East Side cool theater, like for hipsters, whatever. We had this slogan, you can't DVR theater, right? And we didn't even give a crap that people were in the audience or not. It was more that we had a purpose that was other than making it to our waitressing shift. It was that we were taking turns. Like if I was acting in a play, that meant the next play I had to either do the costumes or the lights or run the soundboard. And these theaters are dumps. You can all rent them for no money. Well, very little. And what it also did was gave us something to talk about. Like if you happen to meet a casting director or you happen to meet an agent or whatever, you can say, I'm in this thing that's running for the next 5 weeks. I'm not just like sitting on my ass over here waiting for the phone to ring. And it ended up being this amazing like breeding ground for success, because if someone got an agent, that agent would come and rep another person. Or like now I'm on Scandal, Linda Lowy has come and seen everything Iama does, and she's cast every single Iama member on, if not 2, 3 of her shows. So, birds of a feather flock together. Like I really exist not in the place of like, if she got that part, I didn't get that part. Like there are enough parts. And if you get that part, I want to hang out with you because we're all going to move up together. And then I'm going to get this and I'm going to bring you over here. And I like to behave from that place, as does the whole theater company. And the theater company has been my soul saving artistic thing out here that has gotten me through some really crappy times. And it has for everybody else in the company too. And now I'm artistic director of it. Like, who has time for that? But I'm doing it. And I love it. And we do original plays. And some of our plays have moved to off-Broadway. And one of our plays got made into a movie starring Kirsten Dunst and Isla Fisher and James Marsden. And another one of our plays became a pilot at ABC that didn't go. But we're like this breeding ground now for cool young writers who want to get exposed out in Los Angeles. And we're in like 60-seat houses, guys, like half of this, like small. It's just important. It's really important. Theater is the only thing that's the actor's medium. It's the thing that you get to do beginning, middle to end. I did a play for the first time in a while in May with my theater company. And it was the most terrifying thing I've done in a long time. Like, I remember sitting backstage before opening night and being like, oh my God, if I flub, I don't get to say, I'm going back to 1, which is what I do on Scandal all the time. You don't get a second try. You get once. And then you're going out there to be judged by people. I'm like, oh my God, like the LA Times is here, LA Weekly's here. Like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And then you get out there and you get that first laugh and you're like, you're like, oh, right. And then you tell your story. Acting in TV and film is also wonderful. It's so great. And it's great in a different way. But a lot of times when you watch the episode back, it's edited differently. The scenes are cut and moved around, and editing and directing in and of itself is an art form. So it's not, you're adding to the one small cog in the whole wheel. Whereas like theater, it's like you get up on that stage and like if someone told you to do something, you can or can't do it. Like whatever, it's up to you. It's your wheel. Do you know what I mean? And I hadn't felt that in a while, and it was so scary and so rewarding.
I mean, the other element of that too is on Scandal, you're going from A to B and then B to C, and in theater, you're A to B and then A to B again. I mean, what did you sort of figure out about your process in returning to theater and sort of playing a character on a loop as opposed to on a straight line?
It's so awesome. Yeah, it's really interesting. When you get to do the same play and the same role over and over and over and over again, you surprise yourself with so many little things. You know, you get like really good at like crafting the funny moments or crafting the more dense moments. But in TV, it's constantly. I feel like in TV, there's just never enough time. There's just not. I think there is in movies because they get like 3 months to do 100 pages. We shoot 9 to 10 pages a day. We do an episode every 8 or 9 days. So you're constantly up against the clock, and it's all about trusting your instincts. Oh, and you don't rehearse. You know what I mean? I mean, you get there and you rehearse the scene a couple times and they start shooting it. Whereas a play, you rehearse for 4 weeks. Which is also very different. So when you do a TV show and you show up and you rehearse, you run it a couple times, and then the whole crew comes in and watches it, and then you're shooting it. Which is why sometimes we do the scene, and then afterwards I'm like, oh my God, I just figured it out. Because like we didn't really get to rehearse it that much. So TV becomes a huge exercise in trusting your gut instinct. Like, I'm doing this scene and I feel like I got to walk over here, or I have to sit now, or I'm going to have to get really mad at you right now, or you know what? Like, it's a practice in instinct, and it's a practice in listening. Listening. I mean, all of acting is. The best acting is listening, I think. But it's really about listening and listening and listening, and yeah. But I love it. It's so goal-oriented TV because it's like, chat, like, oh, got that scene. Moving on to the next scene, and I'm type A crazy.
But it's also probably good too because it probably makes you relax a little bit more because you have to be so much less precious about those moments. If you're talking about there's not enough time, you just got to get into it and roll with it.
You roll. And what's cool about Scandal and being on something for 5 years versus before I was on Scandal, you know, I was bouncing around guest starring on everything, which is a completely different gig. When you guest star, it is your job to hit your mark, say your lines correctly. Don't be a pain in the ass for the director. They have so many other things going on, and like do your job well and go home. When you get to be a series regular on a show, you build a sort of theatrical ensemble feeling. We mess up all the time. Like, I never did that when I was a guest star. Like, I came in, I would kill it, I would do it correct every time, and then go home. Here, because you're one of the leads, you're playing around with the other leads, and it's all about staying loose, staying organic, like listening, like, oh, if something new comes, you know, and then also a lot of times we'll flub and be like, we're taking it back. Like, we all just really hold each other up, and everyone makes mistakes like all day. Usually because we got the lines the night before or the day of.
I mean, do you feel like years of doing the one and dones on these other shows, though, also makes you sort of treat other actors differently because you see the monsters other people can be?
Yeah. That crap doesn't exist on Scandal because, you know, the saying shit rolls downhill, but it's true. Like, that behavior does not exist on Scandal because Shonda Rhimes and Kerry Washington are literally the loveliest, grace personified people. Like, there's none of that. But I had guest starred on a lot of shows where the number ones and the number twos were not nice and really just, like, wanted to get home. So you have to be prepared for that, and that's fine. But it's so beautiful on Scandal. Also, our guest stars are so good. and we're very well aware that the episodes rely so much on you guys caring about the guest star, because a lot of times it's the case of the week, and if you aren't invested in them and in the storyline, it's like, who cares? So when the guest stars come in, a lot of times they're doing far more difficult stuff than Quinn. Like, they're sitting there hysterical crying about rape or racism or something huge, and I'm just like, holy crap, like, these actors are absolutely killing it for us, and we're really lucky to have them, and we are, I hope that, I mean, the reputation, I think, is that we're really good to them. I mean, I am, and everyone I know on the set is, so.
We took some questions from the audience. The
Ooh,
first one is
okay.
from Susan.
Hi, Susan.
And she would like to know, what kind of prep work do you do before meeting with casting directors and producers?
I think it's really important to definitely look them up and know every single, like, most things they've done. Hi, Susan. Thank you for the question. I think it's really important to do your research. It's like if you were going in to, like, get a job at, like, a hedge fund. I have no idea what I'm talking right now. You would probably look up the company. You would look up the company, what they do. I feel the same way. Like, if you were meeting with a casting director or a director, it's like you immediately go to their IMDb page. You immediately see all the work they've done. You try to get your hands on any of those projects, so that when you meet with them, you can be like, I loved that movie that you like, what an amazing cast you put together. I really look up to that actor, and I feel like that person was barely known before you put them in your movie. That's really, like, well done. You know, I feel like those things really help. I think people listen, so know the type of stuff that they're looking for. And I think for auditions, it's like, if you're going in on a show, yeah, you gotta have seen some of the episodes of the show. You gotta know the tone. You gotta know how big the comedy is, how small the comedy is, how dramatic it is, how small it is or big. I already said that, but you get what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that help? Yeah?
The next question is from Rena. And she said, do you feel like you need to switch up your technique or use different acting tools so often on the show because of your character's journey?
I would say yes. I think that Quinn, now I have to be in a much different physical place. It's more of a physical warm-up than it was in the beginning. Early Quinn walked how I walked. I was so new to TV. I really was playing her close to the vest and close to my own experience of being new on the show and new to the world and new to being on a television show. And Quinn was new to working at OPA, and she was new to having success and all these things. And Quinn, now I find I really got to get that walk on before I even, like, say any of her lines, because it's just not really how I talk, like, being so, like, you know, that, like, I don't, you know, it's like great, like, I don't really do that. So once I start walking like that and just, like, and I also, I really ground her voice more. I think earlier Quinn was talked a little bit up. And I think this Quinn helps me a lot when I'm direct and using a more of my chest in my voice.
Cool. Ben would like to know, has the world of Scandal and your role made you more politically conscious in a proactive way or in a skeptical way?
Oof, great question. I would definitely have to say skeptical. I can't see a single. It's amazing. I mean, working with Judy Smith, who is one of the executive producers of the show, and that's the real character Fixer that Olivia Pope is based on, except she didn't sleep with the president.
Like you would know if she did.
She told us, because she told us she had to, like, call George Bush Sr. and say, like, okay, this is the show that's happening, but, like, this, like, everyone knows that that's not what happened, whatever. But because she's been involved with so many cases since we started working on the show, like, I know she was with Paula Dean, she was Mike Vick, she has, like, a crazy amount of, she repped the Batman movie after the shootings. I mean, so I can't look at any news line and wonder how it's being spun. Mm-hmm. And who's writing this news feed and why, and what is the reaction it's getting out of us, and what is the real story here. Yeah, I read everything like that now. Everything.
I think all Scandal watchers do a little bit too. It's just sort of like, oh, I know there's someone who made up that.
Agreed. Yes.
So sort of in closing, two things I want to ask you before we go. First is, you've done this a lot throughout the night, but you're in front of a room full of actors. I mean, what advice do you feel like was personally helpful for you that you always try to impart to others when talking about the business or acting or what have you?
I think the most important thing is that if you're calling yourself an actor, whether that means you're getting paid to or not, you can call yourself that, and it's a very proud, wonderful thing to be, that you have to treat it like a 9-to-5 job, and you have to do something for it every day for like a lot of the day. And that can mean your therapy session, your gym session, all of the emails to any networking situation you're in, any event you need to go to, the scene study class, rehearsing with your scene study partners. These are all examples if you're not working. Do you know what I mean? I just try to say, before I was a working actor, I really did stuff towards acting like all day. Because I didn't feel like I could call myself that unless I was really doing the work. I think a lot of people in this town in particular, and I come from New York, no offense, LA, I think people here are, it's very easy for people to be lazy, and I think that people wait for the phone to call them, and that never happened for me. The phone never rang. Like, I had to do a lot of stuff and a lot of work and a lot of banging down doors to get an opportunity. And I think that that's what I expect from, that's what I think it takes. So there's that. And I also think it's just really important to make stuff. I do. And I know people say that, like, make a web series, like, nah, nah, nah. And it's so annoying because it's like, their chances are no one's ever going to see it. But it doesn't matter. It's for you. It's for you to practice. It's for you to give purpose to your life. It's for you to have hours in the day where you're working on your acting career, whether or not you're paying to do it. Do you know what I mean? Like, and not getting paid to do it. It's that kind of thing, so that when opportunity comes knocking, you're good enough to walk through that door and stay there. That's what I would say.
Well, lastly, you talked a lot about the struggle pre-scandal and the odd jobs and things like that. What is it about acting that you love so much that even in those moments where you're not getting the jobs and you're not getting through the door and you're going on the 12th audition, you're like, I don't care, this is who I am?
Yeah, I feel like it's I don't know, when I go, like, if you ever are fortunate enough to go and travel and see, like, amphitheaters from, like, thousands of years ago, like, theater has been a very important, acting has been a very important art form since the beginning of us. And I just feel like a part of it. I just feel like it's so awesome that my job is to be a vessel to tell stories and make people think about stuff, or make people compassionate and want to be in somebody else's shoes for a second. Because I feel like if more people behaved like that, or really were affected and listened to things like that, I don't know, I feel like it's an important job. I do. I also think there's a lot of BS around it, but I think in the heart of it, and especially on a show like Scandal, you can see, like, we deal with very, very serious issues. Yes, it's entertaining, and yes, there are sexy sex scenes and all of these things, but there's also episodes like The Lawn Chair, and when we're dealing with, like, rape in the military and things like that, when you're like, wow. It's important to tell these stories, and it's important for you to be the vessel in which to tell them.
Well, we are very glad you were tonight. Katie, thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you to all of you coming out to SAG
Thank you
Foundation.
all so much for being here and for watching. And I really, really wish you guys, I break a leg. I'm superstitious because I'm a whack job, but break a leg, everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone.